Hello and welcome. I'm Blair Blackwell, and this is the Daily Market Brief. Let's catch up on what's moving in markets today. Good morning, it's Wednesday, and we're setting up for the London Open. Here are the key themes shaping the session. Growing confidence that the U.S. Federal Reserve cuts rates next month is lifting risk appetite and softening the dollar. Australia's inflation re-accelerated and has the Aussie dollar on the front foot, and the UK's autumn budget is the main event for Europe today. Overnight, U.S. stocks pushed higher and Asia followed, with gains across Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia as rate cut hopes firmed. Europe is set to open stronger as well, with a weaker dollar adding a supportive backdrop. Gold is holding near a 2-week high on those dovish expectations. For traders, that matters. Australia is the macro surprise. October consumer prices accelerated to 3.8% year-on-year, with housing costs, electricity, rents, and new dwellings doing the heavy lifting. That effectively pushes Reserve Bank of Australia cuts out of the conversation for now, and the Australian dollar is bid. Across the Tasman, New Zealand's central bank trimmed rates by a quarter point but signaled the easing cycle is essentially done, and the Kiwi rallied on that last cut message. Meanwhile, in currencies, the dollar is softer broadly as rate cut odds climb, including against the Swiss franc, where the recent pullback has extended. The yen eased off a 1-week high, but downside looks limited as talk of the Bank of Japan leaning more hawkish keeps buyers interested. Euro yen remains range-bound as those forces offset. In emerging markets, the Indian rupee underperformed at the open despite the softer dollar, with importer demand keeping a bid in USD INR. On geopolitics, Taiwan's President Lai pledged roughly $40 billion in additional defense spending and criticized Beijing's pressure tactics, a reminder of persistent regional tension. In Europe, ministers are weighing a large funding package for the European Space Agency as it pivots more toward security, another sign of defense moving up the policy agenda. And in commodities, oil is inching higher after hitting 1-month lows, helped by a private report of a U.S. inventory draw and ongoing chatter about potential progress on a Ukraine-Russia peace track, but the tone remains cautious. Turning to markets and sectors, the softer dollar and firmer risk tone are supportive for global equities and precious metals, while they weigh modestly on the greenback versus the euro, the yen, and the franc. Hotter Australian inflation is supportive for the Aussie and local yields. Oil's bounce looks tentative, more a stabilization than a trend shift for now. Looking ahead, the UK autumn budget is the focal point for the European day, with sterling and gilts likely to be sensitive to tax and spending signals given weak productivity and higher borrowing costs. Beyond that, it's a quieter calendar, though rate cut pricing into December will remain the key macro driver. As for my watch list, I'll be watching the Australian dollar against the US dollar, looking for an uptrend to persist as inflation pushes the Reserve Bank of Australia toward a higher-for-longer stance. I'll be watching sterling against the dollar for two-way volatility around the budget headlines and gilt yields as the read-through. I'll also be watching dollar-yen for a softer bias if Bank of Japan hike chatter builds into December, and dollar-franc for a continued drift lower on the weaker dollar tone. In commodities, I'll be watching gold for follow-through on the upside, while oil tries to base after that 1-month low. The takeaway: markets are leaning into a soft dollar, easier Fed narrative, but local policy stories, from Australia's inflation to the UK's fiscal path, are adding nuance to an otherwise risk-friendly backdrop. That's it for today's edition of the Daily Market Brief. Thanks for listening. I'm Blair Blackwell. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice, trading recommendations, or investment guidance.